placing your bread pan on your kitchen scale. Now when you turn on the kitchen scale, it's going to factor in the weight of the bread pan and start at 0. You're going to add 165 grams of water. Make sure you zero out your scale between each ingredient. Next, add 70 grams of coconut oil. For most of the ingredients, it's not a big deal if your measurements are off by a couple of grams. Perfectly exact measurements matter most with the smaller quantities of ingredients such as the salt and the yeast. Add 80 grams of brown sugar. If you're adding ingredients directly from their containers to save time as I normally do, pour carefully. It's hard to remove certain ingredients after they've been mixed together. Add 2 large eggs. Each large egg will weigh approximately 50 grams. It's not an issue if they are a bit more or a bit less. Add 9 grams of salt. Finally, add 525 grams of all-purpose flour and 11 grams of yeast. I often make a little indentation in the flour to hold the yeast, especially if I'm going to put a time delay on my bread machine overnight. You don't have to pour the flour and yeast as cautiously as the other ingredients because it's easier to remove some of these if necessary. Finally, place the bread pan into your bread machine and set it to the dough cycle. Ignore the bread machine for about 10 minutes and then quickly check to make sure it's incorporated all of the ingredients. Some machines have a tendency to leave ingredients sticking to the corners of the pan. I just quickly brush these down into the bottom of the pan where they'll be mixed into the dough. When the bread machine is done, punch the dough down. Then grease a 9 by 13-inch baking pan. In a moment, you're going to switch your scale on while the bread pan is still resting on it. This will cause the scale to start at 0. And as you remove dough, it will register a negative number that represents the weight of the dough you're holding in your hands. Your goal is to remove approximately 63 grams of dough each time you shape a roll. If you pull 62 grams on one roll, then just pull 64 grams on the next roll, etc. Shape each roll by pulling and pinching the dough toward its base as you gradually turn it. This will give you a nice smooth surface on the top of each roll. Don't forget to zero out the scale between each roll. Accurate measurement is the key to a uniform pan of bread rolls. The size of the final roll will depend on how accurate your initial ingredient weights were and how carefully you measure each roll as you shape them. I'm going to move the bread pan and scale so I can work more easily, and I'll put this video on a time lapse to speed things up. In a warm place to rise. I like to use my microwave with the door slightly ajar. This keeps the microwave light on, which adds warmth to the interior of the microwave. You want the rolls to double or triple in size. These rolls take longer to rise than most yeast breads because the pre-baked dough is particularly dry. You can expect the rise to take about 2 hours. I got sidetracked and left these rolls for 2.5 hours. They got a little larger than I like. Bake the rolls in a preheated 400-degree oven for 13 to 14 minutes, or until the rolls are properly browned on all sides. If these rolls are not properly cooked, they have a tendency to collapse in the middle when they are cooled.